What's up, guys? So today it's gonna be a little short video. Today we're gonna talk about two influential people in the history of technology: Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Yep, they both share the name Steve. So Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, sorry, they were both born in the 1950s, specifically 1955. Well, they grew up. They obviously didn't know each other, but when they met in college, they decided, okay, you know what, let's work together. And so in the end, they did a little truce. They came up with a little name, and then kaboom, Apple was made. So the first few years, the company didn't really do much. After a while, with the help of Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, aka the only founder of Apple alive today, well, they made the Apple Computer One. All right, this was the first technology that they made. All right, it had a keyboard, it was like a typewriter and everything. However, it was sadly turned down by bigger companies, and well, it was considered a fail or a dud. But it was still a big step in history. The next big steps would come with the invention of their large computers. All right, home computers, PCs, personal computers. All right. Now, they invented that during the 1980s, 1990s, which is considered the peak of technological advancement in the late 20th century. All right, and well, it did go actually really good. Right, the company got bigger, they were able to produce more, and they made money. But then one day, Steve Jobs suddenly got fired by Steve Wozniak, but because of issues and stuff. However, eventually he was able to come back into Apple because he created a company and it started to rival it, so they merged together into a bigger company. All right. Actually, in fact, Apple helped make Toy Story. All right, Toy Story was made because Steve Jobs. Okay, you know what? I'll help you animate this stuff. So that was the first 3D animated film, or most popular old animated film. All right, because obviously there's a lot of animated films in the past. Now they keep going, and then the early 2000s they invent the iPhone, the most revolutionary item in technological advancement in the 21st century. All right, that thing was an instant hit. All right, instant hit because obviously it's a phone with a touch screen, and you can type stuff on it, and you can send stuff on it, emails, you can buy stuff from it. So yeah, but before that, let's go a little bit time. Now, we have to answer a question here. How did they get screens? Thanks, Steve Wozniak. All right. So back then, calculators were a thing. All right, calculators had screens where you could just type and then boom, you get an answer. Well, he wanted to do that with his computer, and he wanted to see what he was coding. So he made a screen, and it projected from a little projector from inside, and you just type. All right. So thanks to Steve Wozniak, that's why we have screens or even the iPhone. So iPhones continue rising in popularity, and there was many more re-downloaded apps, more storage space. It became popular, so popular in fact that during the early times of iPhones, they camped outside of Apple stores just to get a phone. You have to realize how big you are for people to line out outside your company just to get one of your products. You've grown big. So sadly, over 2001, Steve Jobs would pass away at the age of 56, very young. All right, he really lived longer. Steve Wozniak, however, he stayed strong, and he continued leading the company until it was a retirement. And well, today he is still alive and around, giving motivational speeches and also history, like here's how I did this, here's how Apple did that, why Steve Jobs was fired, how he came back into the company, and that sort. So yeah, basically Apple has both a not good and a pretty good history. It's like A B F D E A. It's a mixed history. All right. So yeah, thanks for watching my usually not so short video, and goodbye. See you next time.